So I need to.
Okay, could I have your attention, please?
$8,000.
I'd like to call to attention the Tuesday, December 9th meeting of the Sherburne School Committee. On our agenda today, in the area where it says presentations, I'd like to suggest one change. We see number 3 is the capital budget revised. I'd like to move that up to the top of that section so it will flow after the discussion of the Pine Hill School Building Capital Committee up above, so we don't have to go back to it later. Okay, first of all, I'd like to see if there are any community comments. Okay, seeing none, Mr. Welch, could you give us a CSA update, please?
Yes, it'd be my pleasure, thank you. This will be brief. I only have a few updates. The first is that Pine Hill Directory has been printed and dropped off at the school this afternoon. It will be distributed by way of the children's backpacks on the afternoon of December 11th, which will be on Thursday. And the CSA board, on behalf of the CSA board, just want to extend our thanks to the Pine Hill staff who assisted us in bringing us to the finish line, specifically Nancy Bent has significant contributions to this project. Our next event for the community will be on January 10th. It'll be the Pancake Breakfast. That's a Saturday morning at the Pine Hill School. We'll have more information forthcoming on that. And then for those who like to save the dates, the Pine Hill auction, the date for that will be on May 2nd. And that is it.
Thank you very much. Okay, next, the Pine Hill updates, Dr. Brown.
It was a very quick turnaround since our last school committee meeting, so it's a very brief list today. Our teachers and parents are in the throes of the parent-teacher conference season, so if you go by the building early in the morning or late in the day, there's lots of traffic. That time of year where teachers are reporting on student progress. I wanted to mention that we still have a long-term sub in for one of our preschool assistants, educational assistants, who's been out with some medical complications. And we are still very engaged in working with our literacy consultants. And I wanted to make mention that we've made some excellent headway. Not only are we continuing to do some large group and small group professional development, but our teachers are feeling comfortable engaging in what we call partner coaching, which really is letting your professional hair down to let someone in your classroom and observe you teaching and provide critiques. So where teachers are continued to be very enthused with the rigor and support of the professional development.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Bliss, you have a
Sure.
report for us?
Thank you very much, Mr. Hess. Good evening, Sherburne School Committee members and the viewing audience. Pleasure to be here this evening on this rainy Tuesday evening. Hope everyone had a safe commute to school and work this morning. It was tricky, a little bit, but we made it.
To say the least.
To say the least. Just a few updates from the report. The School Start Times Committee is alive and well. We're in the process of presenting to parent groups. I spent some time with CSA last week. It was really a delightful visit, a great session. Sorry we missed you, Mr. Welch, there, but it was a good time. It was a good time. You were missed. I presented today to the Positive Group at the middle school and last week to Dover PTO, and we'll be presenting to the high school PTO in a few weeks. These are obviously informal meetings just to bring people up to speed on where we are in the process. I certainly hope that as parents, everyone took the survey. The survey window closed yesterday, so the person who chairs the survey work group is Mr. Richard Robinson, who sits on our committee, and he's in the process of compiling all the results. When we checked, as of yesterday around midnight, we had greater than a 50% response rate from all of our pools. So from that being from students, from parents, so very strong showing. So what the group does now is takes all that survey data under advisement. while I'm sort of out meeting with parent groups and student groups and whatnot. So I would definitely encourage everyone in the viewing audience to spend some time on the school start times part of the DS website. There's a treasure trove of information there. And just to really reiterate that certainly it's not my decision to make alone. It will go through, obviously, our 3 school committees, and we just sense that there is some anxiety that there may be a foregone conclusion that, there's a definite move to change the school start times. And that really has not, obviously not been determined. Certainly it would be vetted very carefully through our 3 school committees and also through our Teachers Association, which has weighed in heavily on the survey to indicate that they very much want to make sure that this goes before their union membership as well, before anything were to be changed. So that's all. There's much work to be done. We really do ramp up, though, in the next couple months, because we hope to have a recommendation to school committees maybe in February. So this will come up sort of quickly upon us. This morning, Christine and I met with Mr. Conley, who owns Conley Bus, and he provided a lot of excellent information about the bus routes and what he thinks. We've been with Conley since about 1979, about what he thinks would work or not work for our bus routes. We also had a great conversation about the next contract and things, just to try to get a little bit of his advice on some things, because we know, for instance, that in our bus contract, which is coming up quickly, we currently run 19 school buses, 19 that service the region. 10 of those buses service Dover Elementary, 9 of them service Pine Hill Elementary in the morning. And we know we do not need to have 9 and 10 buses on the road moving forward. So there are some cost-saving strategies that we're looking at and having pretty rich discussions with him about that. We talked about fuel consumption. We talked about size of buses. We talked about loads within the buses. We talked about compression of bus routes. We talked about all kinds of things this morning that really will hopefully help in ultimately producing minimally a softer bottom line in the budget with respect to general education transportation, and also informs the school start times conversation. So it's such a hefty topic. I don't know if anyone has any questions about that at all at this point, about the school start times. Mrs.
The thing
Hanlon?
I was wondering about was, I know you've probably already answered this, but is the hope that we have a decision for the change for next year? Or
Could be.
could be,
Could
okay.
be, but, so the purpose of the surveys was really to inform next steps. So Mr. Hook is a valued member of the School Start Times Committee, and we're going to pore over the data immediately in the new year and really look at where do we see gaps in people's understanding, what could we do a better job of informing our populace about, and so we're really hopeful the surveys will inform next steps for our committee,
Yep.
so.
Like, the kids have a lot to say. They're all excited about this survey,
They are,
and they've been talking about it. And
yeah.
so I'm just thinking, we have to make sure that they don't have misconceptions too,
Yeah, no, that's
or
absolutely.
expectations or that type of thing.
One thing that's come up that we're very concerned about is just generalized overscheduling of kids. And what concerns us is that any kind of a later start time just compresses, an equal number of competing interests in what would be kind of a shorter day. And
Right.
it really has come up at the region lately, and where the administrative cabinet is going to consider a curfew on the regional campus, simply because the notion of having students on campus at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, you okay, Jim? That's is just it's really not where we want to be, and our students' stress and anxiety is reflected in what we think are just incredibly busy schedules. So we wouldn't want to see a change take place in school start times, only to have nothing really change on that front either. Kids are they're just overscheduled. We heard from a lot of parents who were none too pleased with the very long rehearsals last week, and all
Yeah.
like from the heart, and they know it's for the kids and they want the best show, but
Yeah.
10 o'clock at night, 10:30 is tough to turn around and go home and eat, do
Do
a couple
homework.
hours of homework,
Yeah.
and be fresh. So,
Right.
Mr. Hook, anything I'm missing from the committee?
No, I don't think so. I think you've done a nice job of explaining it. But I would like to underscore that if you do go to the link on the website, which you'll find on the left side of the page, and you have to scroll down a little bit to find it, But once you get there, I think that, I like the word that you used, treasure trove. It's not just research articles and white papers, which there's them there as well if you would like to read them, but there's also the video clips, podcast, radio articles and articles that really go into detail from various perspectives, student perspectives, parent perspectives, brain research perspectives, and so on. So it's a really good site. I really strongly recommend anybody to spend some time there. It really is a good place to get some better information and inform yourself.
Well, thank you, and we're very fortunate to have Dr. Charles Seisler, in addition to the esteemed Mr. Hook on the committee, to have Dr. Charles Seisler from Sherborne on the committee. He is obviously a world-renowned sleep specialist, and he, through his connections, had all of our survey questions reviewed by Dr. Judith Evans, who helped the Fairfax County school system move to their new school start times this year. So Dr. Evans and her husband actually reviewed all of our survey questions to make sure they were balanced and unbiased and all kinds of things. So we're really trying to do our due diligence around this particular topic. But if there's anything that you need answered, just please call upon me or my office, and we'll make sure to get it answered. Thank you. Be happy to. Thank you. We are very pleased to report that Dr. Brown will actually be attending at the Harvard Medical School in January a conference on school mental health, treating K to 12 students. That promises to be a wonderful opportunity. We'll talk a little bit about the capital plan and the notice of intent. We also have for you a handout on the accept. So you know that I sit and represent you on the accept board of directors. We actually have a meeting tomorrow morning. Accept is contemplating a new formula for calculating out-of-district special ed transportation. So what we did is we actually made a copy of sort of the summary of the formula change, and then Terry Green has done a nice job on the back. It's an extremely complicated formula. It seems, to me, unnecessarily complicated. I certainly intend to share some views on it tomorrow morning with the board. There was a subcommittee put together to look at this particular formula change, and I think Terry, there you are. Mr. Garland, do you mind? Thank you.
Will it cost us more or less?
Well, it's really interesting because it's a ratio-based formula, and we have Audrey Moran working very closely with Terry to crunch the numbers to determine whether our three districts are going to come in for soft landing or hard landing on this new formula change. So I don't know, Terry, did you want to speak to the
Certainly.
one?
I put together a sample for you of the way that the formula works. As Steve said, it's quite a complicated formula. So what they did was they assigned a point ratio to students depending on their transportation. So a student is assigned a 1 point factor if they are a Sherborne resident being transported to Pine Hill School for some reason, so within the town, that's given a factor of 1. If you are being transported to any of the accept collaborative programs themselves, you are assigned a point 2 factor. If you are being transported to any programs outside of accept programs, it's done by miles. So if it is less than 10 miles, you are given a factor of 3. If it is less than 50 miles, you're given a factor of 3.5. And greater than 50 miles, you're given a factor of 4. The way that works is I actually did a sample school for you below that has 0 students in the factor of 1, 2 students factor 2, 2 in factor 3, 9 in 3.5, 2 in factor 4. It's a total of 15 students, but then what you have to do is multiply that out times the factor. So the students that are, the 9 students that are factor of 3.5 have to be multiplied out. It ends up being a total point for this sample school of 49.5. What they then do is they calculate all of the districts that use accept transportation, and I just use fictitious round numbers. So if all of the districts using accept transportation average out to, say, 1,200 points, you would then be based on the 49.5, you are, this town would be 4.12% of the points, the total points for accept transportation. They then factor that into, or they calculate that into their total budget. So for this version, say their total budget is $5 million for transportation, at this school's percentage of 4.12, it comes out to $206,000. They then take that amount and they divide it by the number of students, in this case 15 students, and come up with an amount of $13,733 per student being transported. It's a very, as Steve said, it's a complicated formula to be using. What happens here is that once we receive the calculation, it remains the same for the year. So what they will do is they will take a snapshot on a certain date. These are the number of students that that are being transported by accept transportation. These are the number of students that fall into each of these factor categories. This is your cost per student. Once they calculate that on that date, it remains that cost for the school year. Whether you add students or take students away from transportation for the year, your cost remains the same. They will calculate your total cost, divide that by 10 months, and bill you monthly. So it's a very different kind of formula from what we use now. The other piece in this that's a little complicated as well is this cost only covers transportation from September to June. It does not cover transportation for summer programs. Partially because some students attend summer programs, some do not. Some are actually enrolled in a summer program, may not attend the program. Some summer programs run 5 weeks, others run 6 weeks. There's a lot of variables in the summer program, so we would have to calculate the cost for summer transportation separately using the current per mile cost. So,
Thank you. So it's, and I know that this has been a tough, thank you very much, Terry, for deciphering this. What Terry's in the process right now of doing is, Accept has sent to Terry and to Audrey Moran, our out-of-district coordinator, a list of all the students and the sending town and where the students are going. And so they're in what we're affectionately calling sort of a discrepancy reporting window right now, which is looking at it, making sure that in fact they have one of our students assigned from Dover or Sherburne from the right town and going to the right location. So we're in the process of, there were a couple errors that were detected on that, through that exercise, where students were, they just had them coded either regionally, there were just coding issues there. So Terry and Audrey have done a nice job of scrubbing all of that. And then the Accept board felt like this was being done early enough because most districts haven't even begun their fiscal 16 budgeting yet. So when I kind of put an alarm out last week saying, we're in the final stages of our budgets here, they were a little shocked. So this will be discussed and voted upon presumably tomorrow in the board meeting. So we got some numbers late in the day from Audrey, and we're trying to decipher what those numbers look like. Some years you'll be up, and some years you'll,
Exactly. Somebody asked, is this going to cost us more or less? Each year will vary. I mean, we'll have some years where there might be a cost savings for us based on the fact that we had few students on the date they take the snapshot that are being transported, and we add some in, and we have a cost savings there. Other years it'll be exactly the opposite. So it will be from year to year quite fluid.
How many kids do we have that are affected by this?
12.
So,
12 out of district regional age, 3 out of district elementary age, for a total of 15.
so this is real?
Well, that could be, but yeah, I mean, we just grabbed it.
No, okay. And the 5 million that's kind of
Fictitious.
that's
It's close. It's all rounded off.
I think it would be a very volatile budgetary item because you could have major swings. I mean, you could anyway with the mileage base, but it really needs to be
Right.
considered
And it'll
that
be,
percentage of the total is probably not going to vary
for the small.
that much. I mean,
probably not.
if it goes from 15 to 18, that's not a huge percentage swing, I assume, out of the total.
Well, and also realizing that you take a, town like Framingham that has 50% of accepts transportation business. Yeah, I mean, we're never really gonna move that needle in terms of our numbers. Harry?
I don't hesitate to bring this up. I don't know if it's a wise thing to do now. But it sounds like regardless of the actual number, it's a fairly small number of students involved here. And we purchased a van last year at the Region. And that was like 36,000, I think, something like that. And so I'm just wondering at what point, is there a point, are there issues involved in providing our own transportation? Not necessarily that particular van, but with, and I hesitate to say because I may be like opening a Pandora's box here, but
Well, you are.
financially.
That's
That's what I do best.
It is true. I mean, that actually, when we were sitting in Terry's office today, I think that what we should probably do go forward is really maybe put some kind of a subcommittee together to really look at that, to say, with that come all kinds of implications. So if we had our own fleet of vehicles,
Right.
drivers, training,
Right,
issues that
right.
come up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does it all add up to?
Yeah,
And
you hire a transportation coordinator.
Right, no, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I'm just raising it.
It's true.
And also, how wide-ranging are the destinations where these people are
Wide.
going?
So we go between everywhere as north as very northern Massachusetts to very far into Rhode
So
Island.
it wasn't like one van could take
No, we would.
very
The
many.
point of the
Oh, no,
collaborative
no,
is
not one van.
to lower expenses, right?
Yeah.
Economy scale with the collaborative, yeah.
Frank?
I do want to say that a lot of the work that you and Terry Green and the special ed department has been doing has been working on trying to get more in-house so that we would have less transportation costs and minimizing transportation costs. I think also in bringing some of these except collaborative classrooms into our own buildings could potentially minimize some of the transportation costs as well. So you've done some things in minimizing transportation costs, then there's certainly more things to consider trying, but
Well,
one would be the
yeah.
van, the other is to look at more options of, keeping certain situations in-house if at all
Oh,
possible.
absolutely. And the other, a parent happened to visit me in my office over the weekend, and we were chatting a bit about one of our basketball teams, and I said, we've really taken advantage of having another van at the Region because it's allowed us to take one of the other vans, and we're actually able to do some student team transport on another van more than we've been able to in the past. So that's helped because whenever we can do that, we're using our own van and we're not hiring a bus and a bus driver and running a huge bus when we could be running a 15-passenger van. So the father was asking the question, why are we using a van? And I said, why are we not using it? It's a great thing to be doing and that we're able to do now. So certainly, and I know our budgets are done so early, and that's a good thing. But when something like this comes up, it's I'll be at the accept meeting tomorrow, and I'll do my homework around it. But it's going to be a little bit tricky. I suspect there's probably a lot of momentum to move into the system based on the subcommittee of people that I saw on the list. So that good news. We'll shift gears. Thank you, Terry, for doing the work on that. Just another plug for the Internet Safety Night on February 12th. Also, Dr. Leduc met yesterday afternoon with the Wellness Committee, and we look forward to an update on what recommendations are forthcoming on food service. This was their meeting. That's their focus group meeting to come up with their action plan and to quantify what it will take to make that happen. At our last meeting on November 18th, Mr. Garland had a question regarding, I think, question number 6 on the alumni survey. We responded to that the next day on November 19th, so I think you should be satisfied, I hope, on that, Mr. Garland?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, good. Chemical Health Night on March 9th, and wanted to also recognize the Sherborne Community Center student directors, with whom Mr. Hook has a working relationship, and just for their great work with the recent food drive around Thanksgiving. So thank you, and kudos to them. And also we had a number of students who signed letters of intent to go off and play college teams. So this is all sort of regional news, but good stuff to include. And the Boston Globe will be here tomorrow. I just learned this about an hour ago. For a photo op at the Nora Searle Field. We include in your report a picture of the championship board that the DS Boosters fundraised for. And that's actually right on the press box at the Nora Searle Field. And Boston Globe will be with us tomorrow morning about 8 a.m. Because they're doing a profile on very successful boosters organizations in Metro West communities, and DS Boosters is being featured. So, exciting things happening, and I would be remiss in not putting on a shout out to our Brain Busters. I received this news, and as did Dr. Brown over the weekend. The Brain Busters received the coveted golden ticket to advance to the state competition. This was at Saturday's regional qualifying event. In addition, the Brain Busters won the competition-wide elimination round, winning the, quote, Last Robot Standing Award. They also won the prestigious Robot Programming Award. So onward and upward they go, and received a copy of the press release that's going out. So kudos to our Brain Busters, right, Dr. Brown?
Absolutely. And I consulted with them today. They're willing to consult on our drainage problems.
We need them. The labor rate might be great. Okay, so thank you very much. Dr. Leduc is not with us tonight. She is ill, but in her report, we have a lot going on this week with code.org. It's the Hour of Code. There are all kinds of computer programming initiatives underway at all of our schools. In fact, Representative Denise Garlick from Dover will be at the middle school tomorrow at around 11:30. She'll be working with some students in one of our computer science classes at the middle school tomorrow, so we look forward to that. And December 1st, Professional Development Day was a huge success. We thank Dr. Brown, all of the administrators, and all of the presenters who did a great job in putting together. It's a tough thing to move 205 educators around for a whole day into meaningful professional development, but she and her team did a great job of that. So congratulations and thank you to them. Ms. Tague, Business Manager?
The status of appropriations has been applied to the school committee for November 30th. There's only a few minor items to report. One is we will have a budget variance somewhere due to the results of we've gone forward with a new website design. The previous website contractor was just totally unresponsive. Every time we called them, they were billing us for things, and it was costing us a great deal of money, and they were not responding to our needs. We had this particular firm design about 6 years ago. So, so the portion of the Sherborne share, I believe it's about $5,000. So that, right now it was charged to the superintendent's contracted service account, but it will be transferred to the IT department. They just didn't know where to charge it, and I wasn't around to answer the question. Legal settlements, we've done all of the contract adjustments. We made a minor contract adjustment for overtime for the custodians as a result of a 2% increase on their contract. So as a result, you should not see any further budget adjustments. There's a variance of $3,900 in the media and a negative variance library media center, and that was because we proceeded with the purchase of something that will be donated, and we had to park it somewhere to get a PO out. Typically, that would, once the donation is received, it would come out of the donation fund account. Positive news on OOD tuition and transportation. Right now, we're projecting $100,000 positive variance between K through age 22. And that's it for now.
Okay, thank you. So next we have the Pine Hill School Building Committee capital update. You have a couple of sheets in your packet there. The Capital Budget Committee, excuse me, the Building Committee met with the Capital Budget Committee last week. And during that discussion, of the items that we had requested. One of them was the library shelving, and this shelving was a new item that was on there. It had not been vetted as well as some of the other items that are on there, and some concern was noted from some members of our own committee who wanted to look further into that idea. So you have, the first sheet shows the request of $230,000. And then you have a notice of intent, and then the second sheet shows a total of $200,550. We have removed that thing from the shelving. And so if it's the pleasure of the committee, you probably should reaffirm this number going forward. But before we do that, I'd like to let everyone know that Jim Campbell, who's on the Townwide Public Safety Committee, has been tasked to check all the buildings as far as their susceptibility to lightning strikes. I guess the police station has been hit 2 or 3 times and has a lot of damage. Pine Hill School was hit either 2 or 3 years ago, and it knocked out the main panel and caused a lot of damage at the school. So that he would also like information from the school. Now, the problem is that if we do a town-wide capital look at somehow protecting all of the buildings to these lightning strikes, then it would make sense to have all the buildings together if we go out to bid, because you could probably get a better price. So then the question would be, should this be in the Pine Hill notice of intent or in the town-wide notice of intent? The impact of the taxpayers is really nothing, because they're going to pay for it no matter which one it's in. So, so that's still not settled. So even though we're taking out the shelving, and you missed that, Mr. Serber, we're going to remove that shelving for now for the library, since there was some resistance on going forward with that. So we will remove that piece. But we might have to adjust this later for this item to protect the buildings against lightning strikes. And so that's where we are at this point in time.
Sure, we actually had Babe Johnson, who owns Worley Electrical. He does a good deal of work for us in all of our buildings, and particularly at the Region, come out. And actually what Babe found is that we only have one surge-protected panel at Pine Hill out of all of our panels. So that is of concern. The main electrical panel, case in point, is not surge-protected. So it's probably very astute that to look at this as something town-wide in all the public buildings to determine whether or not this is something that the town would like to move forward with. We have some additional information in detail of what Babe suggests we put in if we were to do that. So all of this has been forwarded to Mr. Campbell, and I think at this point, Mr. Hess, we're just waiting for a cost estimate, but still a determination whether this goes back to Pine Hill Building Committee or
Right.
town level.
And then there's also the thing of whether or not it'd be more or less than $10,000, because if it was less than $10,000, if pooled with the other buildings, it would then meet the criteria for a capital thing. Where if we did it independently, I'm not sure that would be considered a capital cost or not, so we might have to.
It's a lot of home.
Do you have any sense of the like what the police station cost?
Well, they haven't done it yet, they haven't
Oh,
fixed it
oh.
yet. Yeah.
But
They're just doing the survey now, so
Oh.
no one's been.
okay.
Also, though, in discussion with Mr. Kelly, I asked him, because I didn't even know we were looking into this, he said it really won't protect against direct electricity hits. It's more for power surges. The damage we had before was due to a ground surface electrical hit. versus-
Right, and that's what the police station had too. Well, they're looking to
Yeah.
fix the lightning strike. I don't know if it will work or not. I mean, they'll have to see what the experts have to say, but that's what we're looking at right now.
Okay.
So do you have some sense if it's lightning rods or surge protectors or both?
It looks like it would not be lightning rods, because even the police station was never hit directly. It hit the grid somewhere near the police station, and then came in and knocked out all their cameras, and, I mean, they could knock out your computers too.
Yeah.
We had about a $40,000 loss at the regional campus. Remember a couple of years ago, blew out whole segments of the irrigation system, $40,000. It became an insurance claim.
Right, I think it was insurance claim for Pine Hill too, and the problem is, it's not just the cost, it's the downtime. Okay,
Right.
so I think with Pine Hill, what happened when school was not in session.
It happened over the summertime, but we had a lot of damage and extraordinary maintenance repairs to our security system and our fire alarm panel.
Right, so,
It makes sense to have a surge protector, even if it doesn't, against the direct electrical hit.
okay, so,
So we voted to 2:30 last time. When is the, when do we need to vote this again in terms of getting a final
well,
number?
I think we could, as of now, vote this new number of 200, realizing that the notice of intent was just a placeholder. Some people don't even have as much information as we do on the notice of intent. And as we go forward and vet this before
Okay.
capital again or before advisory, that this can be adjusted right up to town meeting, either to be a little more or a little less depending upon the needs. So I would suggest that someone make a motion to adjust our present request to be the 200,550.
So we're not looking at doing anything with the library shelving this year then?
That's right. I think we're going to look into it a bit further.
And maybe even some used options, if we can do some homework on that, see if there are some used shelving options from maybe a private school that's going out of business or whatever.
So I make the motion to accept the new number without the shelving of $200,550 for capital budget request.
Second.
Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, unanimous? Thank you. Okay, so next we have item number 1 of the presentation, the Advisory Committee on Extra Duties, Instructional Leadership Reconfiguration. Mr. Bliss, did you wish to speak on that?
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Hess. And when we last met on November 18th, we spent a good deal of time talking about the proposed Fine Arts Department Chair position. Since our meeting, the Regional School Committee has met, and next week Dover meets. So the Dover School Committee has not even heard of this idea yet, other than the chair of the committee who has some exposure to the topic. So in terms of an update on this still needs entire vetting through the Dover School Committee. And when we last met, however, Sherborne School Committee seemed conceptually in a good place with it, but one.
Really?
Well, not financially.
Oh, okay.
You did not, Mr. Garland?
Keep going.
Okay. So the request to administration in November was to go back and look at the apportionment formula to see if really the apportionment reflects what the benefit would be to the elementary schools. So the Regional School Committee was somewhat in the same place, believe it or not. They felt like this was something they could consider, but did feel as if their apportionment would probably be greater. They didn't take a vote. They didn't need to take a vote because it hasn't gone before Dover School Committee yet. So it's interesting what Mr. Hess did, because I don't want to take credit for his good work, is it did sort of a formula, a spreadsheet here on.
Is that what's in our packet?
It is, yep. So if you don't need a copy of it, you can pass it along. Just to see how, it's really an interesting, thanks Mr. Hess for doing this, it's an interesting exercise, if you want, just waiting for him to get around. So in the yellow zone, in the lower part of the page, is the proposed 50%, 25%. That's the breakdown, but what we've done, or what Mr. Hess did and the others, is look at a 60-20-20, an 80-10-10, and looks, way on the right, it takes a look at what the cost would be if the percentages were shifted for the position. It doesn't move the needle a lot, because you're not talking about a huge amount of money to begin with. But I will share that what this has invited at the region is, we have a growing list of positions that are charged back to the schools at different percentages for different reasons. And there is some desire in the spring at a joint meeting to kind of take a look at that whole list of who, including the superintendent, assistant superintendent, everyone who's apportioned, and kind of how those people are expensed to the different towns, to the different school districts. So the region would like to take that work on, but they definitely would like to see how this goes through the Dover School Committee. But I think there was healthy discussion, probably as much discussion as we had here. There was acknowledgement among many members in the regional school committee that it's very much needed in the area of the fine arts to have some cohesion between the three districts. And I think what the notion was whether at this time it becomes a fine arts department chair position solely at the region, or does it become fine arts department chair position spanning both elementary schools as well? Keep in mind that at the moment at the region, we have one health and wellness regional coordinator, we call her, Dara Johnson, but she is in effect the health and wellness department chair. She just happens to be a department chair for grades 6 through 12. She's the only one. There's no other department chair servicing grades 6 through 12. Futuristically, we may very well move in that direction of having department chairs that span more than just the high school. I will share with you anecdotally that the departments are really split on that. You know, some departments really feel like that would be great, like foreign language is a department that says that'd be great to have some cohesion and have a 6 through 12. Others are not there at all in their thinking on that, so there's an enormous amount of work to be done. So I think where the region is in agreement that the regional budget could own a bigger part of this, fair to say. There seemed to be conceptual support for it in a fairly broad context at the regional school committee level. And I think the people that are on the fence about it, were on the fence thinking, is step one of this to go with a regional fine arts department chair first, 6 through 12, and then have it morph out. My only concern with that is that when that has happened, with Dara Johnson, for instance, when we do curriculum work, she has no jurisdiction in an evaluative way to anything going on at the elementary schools. So on a practical level, from our benefit, in terms of what we're trying to realize from this model, it doesn't really get us to ultimately to where we'll come back to it. Administration will ask you to revisit this futuristically, because when we went through all that curriculum work for health and wellness spanning the past 5 years, Dara, as much as she's respected by her colleagues, her jurisdiction does not extend to these two elementary school districts, and that's known. So she has a good deal of governance over 612, 0 over the elementaries. So that's known. She doesn't go into those buildings. She doesn't evaluate in those buildings. She doesn't really directly contribute to the curriculum or the assessment development in those buildings. It's not her jurisdiction. That's kind of what you give up, right? By having someone who's germane or insular rather, only to the region. So we do have, I know that Judy Miller's here. Judy is president of FOPA, Friends of the Performing Arts, and I know that Judy wanted to speak to this.
Yeah, I did. My name is Judy Miller. I live at 31 Great Rock Road in Sherborne. I have 2 children, both of whom went to Pine Hill from grades K through 5. My son is now a senior and my daughter is now a sophomore. I am an attorney, and despite that fact, I will try and make my remarks brief. I am not an educator. I leave that to all the experts who are here. But I am a parent, so of course that gives me the right to say whatever I want about education. I want to tell you that at the high school and middle school level, my children are extremely involved have been extremely involved in the arts. My son is in advanced placement art with a concentration in photography, and he has been in every single production pretty much since he was in 6th grade. Every musical and every play that there is. My daughter is also involved in the musicals and some of the plays. The program, both curricular and extracurricular at the middle and the high school, is terrific. But as a parent who was at Pine Hill, it would be wonderful to have the Pine Hill program coordinated with the middle school. So when the students flow up to the middle school, it's a continuum of the curriculum and a continuum of the extracurricular opportunities that they've had as they progress through the system. And I think that this position, I'm just phenomenally excited about it. It's a .2 right now. There is no, with a lot of energy and actually a lot of parent support, we can do really great things. The thing about the arts that is wonderful at the high school, both the curricular and extracurricular programs, is it doesn't just benefit kids like my son, who's fairly talented. It benefits a wide range of kids for a wide range of reasons, social, emotional, and, talent, kids go off and go to art school or acting school. The nice thing about this position will be that a person who is up there will also be working on the curriculum, will be working on exhibition and performance opportunities for the elementary school kids, as well as, you said the words and I didn't quite remember them, helping to evaluate, working on the evaluation rubric, would that be correct?
Evaluation system, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so it gives a nice continuity for the content, it gives an emphasis on it, which is incredibly important for these kids, because for some of these kids who are not artists but have other issues and need a life raft, the arts are a great life raft for those kids with a broad range, kids who have a broad range of issues. I've seen it in the high school program throughout the years that my kids have been involved in it. It's a great idea. I heard someone talk about the Dover-Sherborne School District as being a great district, and how do we go from great to incredibly much better and really excellently great. And I think this is one of the ways that we do that. And I think it just, for the amount of money, and I know that's an issue, and I hope that the region decides to pick up a little bit more of that cost and have a little bit less here, but even at what's proposed, it's a great bang for your buck. It's going to be just wonderful for these kids. And I'll end my comments with one thing, which is, I talked to the teachers at the middle school, and I know some of the 6th grade teachers, and one in particular said to me, at Pine Hill they have Friday morning meeting, and I assume you're still doing it, and always the Pine Hill kids come into the middle school and can sit still better and can listen and can appreciate, I don't mean to diss Dover, but and they really think it's because they have those opportunities, they attend Friday morning meeting, and they're able to understand what it means to be an audience. So it doesn't just benefit the kids who are performing, it benefits everybody in many ways. It's not just about arts, it's about a lot of other things. Yes, I'm passionate about this, and I know you have better things to talk about, more important so, but thank you very much.
Judy, thank you very much. The Friends of the Performing Arts is just an amazing arm, one of many in our school system. But Judy, thank you for your leadership on FOPA. It's very intricate organization, and I think a lot of times, particularly at the region, we talk about we have 84% of our student body involved at the region in interscholastic athletics. We have a very strong percentage of our students involved in our theater program that really begins with Scott Walker's program here in the summer, with running his shows here at Sherborne Community Center. And happy to report Scott Walker, although he's not under our employ any longer as a teacher at the region, Scott will continue to run the summer theater program for us. So he keeps definitely his hand in the pie here. So thank you very much, Judy, for all that you do and FOPA does for our kids. We appreciate it.
One thing, that sheet I got passed out to you about the relative costs. One thing that was not on there was, what if it was 100% to the region, the cost? And The difference between having it 100% at the region and having it the 50, 25, 25, the cost to Sherburne would be $377. Okay? So you're going to be paying a good
Say
portion
that
of
again?
It'd be $377.
As opposed to 5,982?
No. That would be, because we'll be paying it anyway. I'm talking about the cost to the taxpayer.
Oh, yeah.
So I think if you look at the columns here on this
The
sheet, Greg,
assessment.
if you look at the columns on this sheet, the apportionment is Sherburne's, which is Pine Hill as a region. So whether we're at a 25% model or a 10% model, if you compare those two extremes, where it would be apportioned to our budget at 5,982 at the 25%, or if it were at the 10%, it would be 2,393. That would be our budget. But the town of Sherborne, for this position, would still be paying this number that's way to the right, 11,360 at the 10% to us, versus if it were at the 25% to us, 5,982, it would be a cost to Sherborne of 11,585, so only a $250 difference.
Once you pass, take one pass. The thing is, it just depends on what pocket you're talking about. It would, if it was all in the region, our budget would be less, okay? But our cost would not be that much less. It would only be
the town's cost.
$377.
The town's cost.
The town's.
I've got a question. You started off your pitch last meeting, we're talking about how great it was at Pine Hill. So it just seems to me, and I think this is a wonderful thing for the region, not the least of which is to separate the two entities, and so the
Technology and engineering.
Yeah, technology.
Yeah.
I think you'd benefit hugely
Right.
by having that coordinated with the middle school. But it seems like we'd be paying money, without regard to how much, it's like we don't have a problem that needs to be fixed. And I would say, if somebody could say, what's going to be different? Here it is now. This is how it's going to change, and this is why it's good. But it's more of these broad conceptual ideas of, well, it's going to be coordinated. I just can't see how it would
Sure.
be all that complicated to.
It just doesn't happen. There's no,
But what's
quite honestly.
what's the going from and I agree with tons of what you say, especially in middle school and high school. But I'm just curious, how does it change what the kids are doing in the fourth grade, for instance?
Yes.
You know, I told Steve when I came in I'd like to have this position, but I don't have any skills for it. I'm just a lawyer. I think there are a zillion...
You could volunteer and it wouldn't cost us anything.
She gives us plenty of time.
Perfectly honest, if you approve the job, I'll probably end up volunteering to help and make sure that the first year or two go well for it. So you get me, as a freebie. But there are things that can happen that don't happen now, that can only happen if we have this position. Here's some examples. I was at a production at another school, a private school, and during the intermission for the theater production, they had an art exhibition in the room where you go and have snacks during intermission. Well, wouldn't it be lovely during the 4 middle and high school performances to have exhibitions of art K through 12, okay? The kids who are in the elementary schools don't necessarily have those opportunities. Wouldn't it be great? There are a myriad of sort of extracurricular things that if there is one coordinated position that can be trickled down to Pine Hill and that Pine Hill can be involved in. In addition, there has been a discrepancy between Pine Hill and Dover in terms of chorus, okay? Dover has one kind of a choral program, Pine Hill has a different kind of choral program, and when they come together, while it always works out, standardizing that, or even collaborating among the schools. There are so many possibilities of things that can enhance the elementary experience for these kids by having someone who sees down the road what they're going to be experiencing and to trickle that down to Pine Hill. One other example, am I doing okay?
You're doing great.
Okay.
As long as we're not on billable time.
No, I'm
Okay.
And here's another example, band, okay? There just,
You can talk to other people here, because nobody thought it was a good idea last time we.
Okay.
So I appreciate it. I
That's
feel like I'm being
untrue.
singled out. Everybody, well,
That's
people.
That's untrue.
Okay.
here's an example, if there's someone who's overseeing it, who knows what those kids, and getting them in 4th grade when they start band, really getting them to love musical instruments. And having them see what's down the road in their lives at the middle and the high school. And maybe doing some coordination, like with the 5th graders and the 6th graders in the middle school. There are a million different opportunities. If there is one person who's thinking about Pine Hill and is thinking about how are we going to get the Pine Hill parents, like I know parents who have kids heavily into the drama program who have Pine Hill kids too. They can go to this person and say, hey, let's do a show. And if there is a coordinator for everything, for the small amount of money that you're paying, the program that can be, it really is a small amount of money, the program can be enhanced. It's the idea of, yes, we have a good program, but we are the best school district in the Commonwealth. Let's have the best program in this area as well, okay? And I think the band is a really good example, okay? Because then those kids can see where they're going. Maybe you have a field trip for the band kids to go and sit in with the 6th grade band one day and see what it's all about. I don't know because I'm a lawyer, I'm not an educator, but there are so many exciting ideas that this position can bring about. And the only way it's going to happen for the elementary students is if they sign on and be part of the program.
And a point of clarity that you spoke to.
Yeah.
Currently, there are no theater or drama experiences at the elementary
Oh,
level.
well, we can fix that. No, seriously though, that's a really important thing.
What did you say, no theater or drama?
There's no intentional theater or drama experience at the elementary level at this time.
And let me give you,
I'm
let me
not
say
sure,
one-
but they have Lewis and Clark. Is that not a drama? I mean, isn't that performing arts? What?
It's a
maybe-
creative singing to a CD on stage.
Two teachers do that.
Yeah.
Let me give you an example. My son, last year, had the honor of directing one of the middle school. The middle school did 3 one-act plays. My son was a junior last year. He had the opportunity to direct one of those plays, and then he wrote his college essay about the experience of directing one of those plays. I could easily see having the middle school, the 8th grade middle school students who've been in the drama program and been in 6 productions coming down to Pine Hill and in the spring, doing an after-school directing program. But you're only going to get that if you have, someone in the performance area who knows what's going on in Pine Hill and has the clout, has the ability, it's what you were talking about, has the ability to come here and say, hey, how about this, Dr. Brown? Let's put this in place. Here's how it's, and someone with the background in the curriculum who can do that. It's incredibly exciting. And as I said, like at the middle school and the high school, it's not just about teaching kids how to be artists, because, somebody said this to me when Drew was playing t-ball. He said, none of these kids are playing for the Red Sox, okay? And it's sort of, very few of them will end up being artists when they grow up. But many of them, but what's really important educationally is things like learning to collaborate and those kinds of things.
I agree
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm talking too long.
basically with everything you're saying.
Okay.
Except that, when you think down the road, I just think we tend to, there's lots of great ideas out there. Can we afford $6,000? Sure. Town of Sherburne's going to pay for that. Anyway, that's fine. But I think about the other things that we would normally do. With library bookshelves that the tops are loose, they can be corrected with a couple of screws. You can spend that money in other places, and I'm not sure, and that's wonderful, but it's not like it's bad at Pine Hill. It seems like it's pretty positive based on superintendent's comments last time. And I wonder how, and I think those are great ideas, I believe in the arts, all that stuff, but if we're saying there's going to be more experiences that the kids will have, then how do you balance that with where we take time away out of the curriculum for foreign language, and we learn about all the great, wonderful benefits of that, then you're going to be taking more time away from math or English or all the other things there. So it seems to me like it's priority. So how, if you're going to be doing more in the arts, what's it going to take away from?
Well, may I ask this, can I frame that into this question is, of this position, how much of this position's time is, and this is pointing to Mr. Bliss and Dr. Brown, of this position's time is looking at the curricular, the current music and arts programs, and how that will streamline through all the grades, as well as how much of this person's, individual's time and efforts are going to be spent on after-school hours and extracurricular, and how does that get affected? So it's not just an issue of taking time away for the performing arts and creating that, but it's all of the arts, both during school and after school. And that's what I'm trying to get a sense of, what percentage of what and what. So in Greg's question is, what are we getting for this money, and how much time is it taken away from education?
From a curricular standpoint, again, a lot of work has gone in. Folks in music and art positions have taken the initiative to collaborate across schools, and we certainly have developed curriculum over the last few years that wasn't articulated in the past or wasn't consistent across all of our schools. We have huge places to go in technology integration in the arts and music with regard to Common Core expectations and 21st century practices. Writing across the curriculum is an initiative for our school system. We haven't begun to tap what that looks like in our allied art classes. There's always opportunity to more robustly connect cross-curricular experiences, with science and social studies and other kinds of. Our teachers do that individually now, but we don't have any cross-curricular units where music and art co-integrate in a larger context with regard to student learning. So from a curricular standpoint, we don't have common assessments yet in the arts and music, so we've got huge places to go, despite excellent foundation work that's been done.
When we
I'm sorry. Mr. Someone in the audience?
Oh, if you want to, I can, after you speak.
Oh, thank you so much. So when we began the curriculum work several years ago, that was just the beginning. I think that maybe it was sold as sort of a fait accompli and, end of story. That was just the beginning, and it wasn't, and it isn't as if, absent of a department chair, somebody who affords the level of cohesion for the arts, there isn't someone spanning 3 districts who's in that role to do that. So when we talk about the integration of technology, we talk about common assessment development, and we talk about revisiting, revising in a dynamic way the curriculum that was created. So on all the early release days, for instance, when all the department chairs are putting together robust PD, where does that happen for Sarah Richards, Kelly Hodge, Pine Hill? They're islands. They're in their own world. They're Pine Hill. You have someone in place who's putting, and that's just one piece of it, the PD component, someone who's bringing all these folks together on a regular, on a consistent basis. That's the job of this person who has the requisite skill base to do that. Well, otherwise, in early release days, Sarah will do work, she'll, but it's not guaranteed that Sarah's going to be liaising with all of her fine arts colleagues 6 through 12 and realizing where the gaps and overlaps and all the opportunities lie.
Why wouldn't you be pushing this for math and English and every other subject?
Oh, I think actually it's interesting, Greg, because where we have now foreign language at the elementary school, the discussion came up a few weeks ago where next year we'll have K1, 2 in Spanish at both elementary schools, thank you for that. And then very soon, we're already broaching conversation with the middle school foreign language department chair, because she wants to begin to do more work, because we have to ramp up as a school system to get ready for the elementary students to move into the middle school. It just doesn't kind of happen. I mean, they'll move naturally, sure, in an X number of months. They will absolutely move into the middle school, but will the groundwork have been done to make sure that that's a seamless transition? You know, I equated, Greg, to this when a few years ago we had the 6th grade ELA teachers at the middle school split up. And some of them went to Pine Hill, some of them went to Chickering. And because they said, you know, what is balanced literacy? What does Readers and Writers Workshop look like at the elementary level? They had no conception of it. So they spent time watching how English language arts instruction is delivered at the elementary level. Many came back and said, you know what, my writing expectations are too low. That was one example. 6th grade English teachers coming back saying, you know, what I have my 6th graders doing is below what they're capable of doing based on what I saw. That wouldn't have happened, and we're heading there. We're going to try to act as a region. I mean, if there's any appetite eventually for regionalization.
It seems like it makes sense to start with the middle school when math is not, I mean, there are issues with math between the middle school and high school. Some pretty major issues that I've experienced. So it just seems like a big jump. I think in general it's a great idea, but.
So you think this is a great idea now?
I think in general,
Has my pitch
it's a great idea.
Thank you, Judy.
But it's still, you make it just seem incredibly complicated when it just doesn't seem like it'd be all that complicated.
But it is.
That's all. I mean.
Well, you asked I think, a similar question last time, and I'll answer it.
But I think we should probably table it until Dover. I don't see why we need to vote on it tonight, because Dover hasn't even seen it yet.
Oh, that's right. No, there's no vote, absolutely. But
But
you asked the question about why here. It was the music and the art teachers, and it was our fine arts teachers who first made the effort to say, because they are largely isolates in their building, you know, you have 1.8 art teacher, Pine Hill. Sarah Richards is like a newly invented person. I mean, with the improvements to her classroom and her ability now to liaise with Susan Pelletier, who's our visual arts teacher over at Chickering. But there's not really that natural connection. This is the group of teachers that first came to us and said, we may be 3 districts, we'd like to function as one. Then the health and phys ed teachers came and said the same thing. So that's why we're starting there. Yes, do you have something?
Yeah, I'm a former Pine Hill parent. My kids are in the high school now. And I feel really strongly about this because I think the arts are an incredible way to teach other subjects. I think it brings a cohesion to those subjects. For instance, in history, English obviously, but in history, there's so much more depth you can bring to the curriculum. In science is the same thing. I mean, there's overlap all over the place, and I think if you have someone who's looking at the curriculum from that overarching view, I think you get strengths at all levels. I also think that, you know, when my kids were at Pine Hill, and it could have changed because they're not there now, but the drama program was after school. They might have something. Miss McKay's class, if you were lucky enough to get her, she would put on a play. Everybody raved about it. Then there was Miss Custodio every now and then when it fit in her schedule would run a program after school. But it's not a consistent thing. And what I've seen in the drama program at the middle school and at the high school is this incredible ability for inclusion. And there are kids who are isolated from day one when they're in school, and they are brought into this community of people, and it affects them so differently. They blossom in such a different way, and there's no reason that shouldn't be extending down into the elementary schools. I mean, I think it's a really wonderful way to include a lot of kids who are isolated. I mean, I think it's important for a lot of reasons, but I didn't hear anybody speak to that, so I thought I'd bring that up.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I just make one comment, or are you just?
I still was kind of looking for an answer to the question about the like extracurricular aspect to the prison jobs. You talked about the during the school day component, but do you see much happening with some of the extracurricular with this position, or
Oh, I think that's where you get a lot of the return on the investment is there, particularly in this area. And we get a large
Pine Hill.
return.
For Pine Hill.
Oh, for all schools, I would absolutely see it. And, you know, we get a lot of return on the investment from department chairs that are, you know, the math chair, the English chairs at the region. Clearly, they put in a lot of time. But this position in particular, by nature of its construct, I think would even yield more than just by nature of, you know, from your experience with the arts, that a lot of this work would happen after school hours.
Susan?
I was just going to say, I think that we need to hear more about the benefits to the curriculum, only because at first there was just a lot of discussion about more of the after-school activities and stuff, and I get all that. I think what I haven't heard a lot of is until I think you started talking about it, how it enhances the in-school type of activities, and you touched on that too. I think that would have a lot more impact on, just from a school committee standpoint, and trying to manage the budget and trying to justify spending, that would have a little bit more impact for us, especially when you're trimming everything here and there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Why don't we work something up and we'll include that then in the January report? Because I think that would be hugely beneficial to all committees. I think that's a good suggestion, Susan. Thank you.
Right, because you
Yeah.
mentioned, like, you know, the Common Core Association, you know, things like that are like, you know, oh, yeah, that makes sense. You know, I'd like to hear a little bit more about that.
It's not indicated on minutes, so I just wanted.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember the last meeting, and it's not mentioned in the minutes, but I thought we had a straw vote on this, a straw poll vote. My recollection was we had a straw vote on something last time. I thought it was on this, whether we had an appetite for moving forward.
Well, I thought that the committee, again, I thought there was some,
And I thought that was a 4-2 abstention, is what I remembered it being at our
I don't
last
have an
meeting.
exact recollection of that.
Might
Everybody abstained.
the straw poll vote have been on the guidance topic?
That's it.
Well, actually, since we have to, you know, there's still room, you know, after the Dover meeting in January to adjust our budget if necessary
Yep.
to reflect any change in the percentages. Because even though we're saying the cost to the taxpayer, difference in cost would be small, the difference to our budget would be fairly large by,
True.
depending on where it happens to fall. So perhaps some of the members who would just want to speak, whether they are for this in concept, and I'll start off as, I'm for it in concept, but I would like to see some reconfiguration of the percentages, the way it lays out to the different committees. If anyone else wants to talk on that, they may.
So, I'm sorry, Susan?
Well, I'd like to, like you were saying, just see a little bit more information.
Yeah.
I think it sounds like, you know, a great idea, and it has to be taken in the context of the whole budget, obviously.
Sure.
So the more information we had, the better. And I know the budget is now, not later, but it would be good to hear a little bit more about it. And like I said, making that connection with the, you know, just with the curriculum itself, I think would help me understand the benefits a lot
That's right.
better. So
And
is
I
that
think
what
you echo, Susan, I think we heard from Ann Hovey, so in abstention, maybe we'll plug that comment and support as well. Since Ann's off tonight working on Annie, I
Right,
think we
right,
can,
yeah.
that's a vote automatically.
Frank, you want to?
Yeah, I'll just say that, you know, based on what I'm hearing from both aspects of during the school day and how that affects the curricular scaling, what's the word for it?
Scaffolding.
Scaffolding, that would help to provide is worthwhile. And then on top of that, you get the benefit of the extracurricular aspects of it as well, with the possibility of maybe even having some, you know, Pine Hill or Chickering students working with plays and some of the students. I think there's a lot of places where there could be a lot of benefit. And, I don't, if we could work out the funding aspect of it, I see that it's a minimal aspect for a huge,
We were
Huge
talking
win.
about
Huge
pe-
win.
kids being overscheduled.
Right.
So,
This is actually, this is so connected to actually stress reduction. It allows kids to find an
It's
outlet
fun.
to plug into. I mean,
Okay.
Let me just address that for, say one thing. I had a teacher recently said to me, they come here, and the things they really want to do are the art and the music and the drama. That's what they really enjoy doing during the day, and that's, to your point, really what helps them get through the rest of the day and be able to focus on the rest of the day.
well, they do music, don't they?
unless at the secondary level, it's.
Pine Hill.
We have general, all grade levels have general music.
Right.
Third grade has an additional music class for, we call it recorder, but it's to learn the,
Right.
how to read
I've
notes.
still got instruments at my house that might.
Fourth and fifth grade has chorus.
I guess.
May I point out just two additional points from my purview, and again, you all have the big picture to consider. As recently as today, having a post-observation debriefing meeting with a teacher, and, as I'm sitting here thinking from a principal perspective, this position can provide two things where I feel like I or our school fall short. And what that is in every, conversation with teachers, how can I better feed you? Are you being fed, professionally speaking? And, putting energized teachers in touch with energized teachers to push and challenge and grow one another in our culture. That's harder to do in a job alone kind of a position. Thinking of, within the context of our general music curriculum, our band program, and our choral program as we have them now, the good news at Pine Hill and in Sherburne, we have a lot of autonomy. The music teacher, for example, the school principal, for example, we have a lot of autonomy to make decisions based on what we know. And I think we make excellent decisions based on what we know. What I'm not confident of is the well-roundedness of our children's overall experience. For example, Kelly Hodge is a phenomenal drummer. We do an African drumming unit, we do a Latin drumming unit that are impressive bar none. We have no bells program, should we? I don't know. We have a great band program. We have no strings program. Should we? These are something with someone with this content expertise, this content knowledge can better advise us. So that overall our children's experience is as rich and well-rounded as possible within the construct of the current instructional time, never mind things that might be added. So that's my 2 cents and my 2 points.
Can I add about 35 cents? Not that much, but I heard a couple of mentions about the Lewis and Clark play, which seems to have gone over really well. But if this, in the context of the way it's being talked about, should come to fruition, it sounds like something like that wouldn't be the exception. Or that wouldn't be the one thing that someone said, oh, I've actually had someone verbalize out loud, oh, I hope my child is in that class in 2 years because I know my child would love taking part in that. I mean, I don't know if that's going to mean that will happen more fluidly or more often, but those are kind of experiences that children really remember and stick with them.
The only other thing that I was thinking of as you're talking is shared resources. I mean, if you have not only like shared instruments and stuff like that, but talent. There, I know the music director over in Chickering is talented in a certain way as opposed to Kelly Hodge. I mean, there's shared resources maybe. Whenever I think of somebody that oversees or brings groups together, I feel like it's a way to see what else. Well, this person has this talent, let's bring them over here, or we have these instruments, let's ship them over there.
And currently, we have no mechanism for that.
Yeah, right.
Kelly thought ukuleles was a great idea. I support that. We wrote a grant, we now have ukuleles. Again, what is the larger picture or construct around that?
Okay. Greg, do you have anything to add?
Nothing.
Okay. All right, then I think that we'll move on to the operating budget.
Oh, a lighter discussion.
Yes.
Room clears.
Thank you. Okay. There's some wonderful handouts for you.
Something that wasn't in the package?
Well, sure, revised. You excited?
This is plot. Are you
The
serious?
plot thickens.
Are you serious?
Of course I'm serious. Lots of wonderful documents for you, Mr. Garland.
But we don't have to vote it tonight. It's the first time we're seeing it, right?
What do you mean?
Well,
No, these are, so revised talking points.
it's still warm.
It should be.
I have one too.
Does everyone have one?
So
Great.
is what's in red the
Sure.
December 9th
So,
component?
yeah, we're gonna go back to, let me bring you back to a year ago, in your brain box. Go back to a year ago. When all the changes that, and anything that we feel like we had to clarify, anything that came about as a result of a question, or some of the things that came about as a result of questions, appear in red. So if we take you to talking point 7, what we decided to do was highlight a bit more of the historical, the class sectioning, the number of sections over the past, what would be next year, this year, last year. We included the school population in each year as well. And then we want to just provide that in case there were any, it gives you kind of a one quick place to be able to go if you're looking at how many sections do we have by grade, so you don't have to go to your staffing and enrollment report. So we thought that was nice, and it also allows you to take a look at where the enrollment of the school has been and what we've done by way of class sections and reductions there too. Number 8, we wanted to add a little more clarity to the assistant principal position and the question regarding the realignment of the salary. So this proposed budget maintains the highly valued and contributory assistant principal at its current .6 appropriation, but aligns 70% against the salary line, 30% against REAP, the REAP grant. In the 2014-15 school year, 60% of this salary was aligned with the administrative salary and 40% with the REAP grant. This is the sentence that changed. The increased evaluation and general oversight responsibility stemming from the special ed reorganization and various aspects of the newly adopted educator evaluation system, coupled with the decreasing REAP grant, require this realignment. It should be noted that the cost of the assistant principal is not increasing, rather, part of his salary is being reassigned. I did not want to create the impression that the special ed reorg has resulted in some kind of a cost structure now that is finding its way into the operating budget. The educator evaluation system, we are in year 2 of the educator evaluation system. Mr. Hook sits on that committee too. And there are elements of the professional growth and evaluation system that are ramping up. It isn't as if this whole system is rolled out. For instance, we have a meeting this week where we have to talk about what we're using for student and staff feedback. There's a whole component of the rating system that we have to implement this year around how do teachers gain feedback from students and how do we as administrators gain feedback from staff. It's a whole aspect of the evaluation system that has to be introduced that isn't even introduced yet, that it requires some administrative oversight. Mind you, this is part of the legislation, not part of our creation.
The student feedback is part of the
Student
legislation?
feedback, yes. Student and staff feedback. In fact, last month, Mr. Huck, were you at the meeting last month?
I was.
We had
Yeah,
the tripod project that's been part of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We had, and part of the MET project, come out and do a demonstration because we have to subscribe to a platform. So we have to make a decision this week on that. So I thought it really was important, and the team thought it important to say, this isn't for people to think, oh, great, you know, the special ed reorg's costing us more money. No, that's not it at all. There are elements of the evaluation system where when we find that teachers are underperforming for one reason or another, regardless of whether it's a special educator or a general educator, we have to spend a lot more time, and we should spend a lot more time with those teachers, and we do. So that's part of the elucidation there. Number 15, this proposed budget is faithful to the retirement longevity language. This came about as a result of it's really the second sentence on the bottom of the page, of the teachers receiving the $3,000 annual longevity payment, one shall receive the second of a $3,000 longevity payment this year and will receive the third next year. There was a question about that in terms of how much are we on the hook for these $3,000 payouts. So we wanted to provide that. And in the larger paragraph on the top of the next page is a question, and it has come up, I'll tell you, it certainly came up at the region. This contractual obligation that we have to tuck away this $5,000 placeholder for 5 teachers, this $25,000 placeholder is a concern. I think to the Sherborne budget here, it's a concern for the $50,000 placeholder at the region, $25,000 for each building. And so the suggestion, which was brought forward through our good partnership with Sherborne Advisory, was, is there a mechanism somehow to be able to have some of this money available for when those retirements are called upon? Because it really troubles us, and I think troubles the town, that every year and should trouble the school committee, is sure, that every year would be, taxing for this $25,000 worth of retirement. The chance of people tapping that is slim to none. It will become part of a surplus. It will become part of a free cash calculation that probably didn't need to be taxed in the first place. So we thank Mary Wolf for kind of putting this at play, and for Mr. Hess for trying to massage this over the past few days. We're trying to get greater clarity in terms of how can this be done for the benefit of the town, but for the benefit of our 3 school districts too. It's a concern. The mechanics of it are could be
We
tricky.
have some legal constraints, things like that. We just gotta iron them out.
So, yeah.
I don't know when you want me to chime in, on anything.
Right now, if you like.
Yeah, I have, we're meeting tomorrow night,
You are.
and this is obviously going to come up. One of the things that I've put in motion is I've got a request in now for a placeholder for a warrant article that would establish whatever kind of fund can be legally established. That's unclear, at this point. So, at least that I've already done. And I actually have a question about this, as you said, slim to none that this is going to happen ever. Particularly because it's an early retirement, which I would imagine limits the number of people, because the mass teachers' retirement become eligible for regular retirement at 55.
Right.
You have to be in the system 15 years to qualify for this $5,000 reward.
Right.
And how the number of people who are in the system in a given year, who are both in their 15 years and less than 55 years old,
But I think you need to,
is vanishingly, well, not vanishingly small.
it
but it's
is,
small.
but it is, but it isn't. It's a really good point. Thank you for bringing it up. It's, so it depends on how the agency defines retirement. So you're 100% right. MTRS says, you're 55 and you've been working 15 years. That's correct. Our contract reads 15 year, defines retirement differently. So theoretically, one could be 50 years old,
Right.
and have put in 15 years at Dover Sherborne.
Right.
Not retire under MTRS because the person's not age eligible to, but could retire out of Dover Sherborne and say, I'm leaving 15 years.
Right, and that person would be eligible for the award.
Correct.
Right, and that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
No, I'm saying the person who is 56 years old.
No, I'm saying, but the person who's 50 could do the same thing. There's no age requirement within the contract.
No,
Yeah.
no, we're in violent agreement here.
We are. Violent agreement.
Isn't that a
No.
No, there's people who are under 55
Yeah.
and have 15 years.
Yep.
They're good to go.
Good to go. Good to go.
They're good to go. They get this money.
Sure.
If they want to.
Right.
If they want to leave, they get $5,000.
Correct.
Okay? People who are in for 15 years or more, obviously, but are over 55, they are not retiring early.
Oh,
You see what I'm saying?
that's a interpretation of the contract.
Well,
So we would think, I would read the contract, and certainly Mr. Hess was the chief negotiator of the contract, that the 15 years, so anyone who hits that 15-year period, but Dover Sherburne would get the 5,000, end of story.
Yeah, see, I have a different interpretation. We spoke earlier that the word early just means they're retiring earlier than if they retired later. I mean, because the way I read it is that.
And
So-
No,
what
wait a
office are
minute.
you running for?
So that if,
so there's
If-
no max, you
No.
can't be forced to retire. So someone who retires at 75 instead of 76.
Right. That's-
Early
that-
retirement? I
that-
think not.
No.
that's the way I interpret it. Someone could be 65 and have
They
worked
might-
here 40 years and still get the $5,000.
Yeah.
How?
They've been here 15 years.
No,
period.
but it's not an early retirement.
Oh, yeah, but
You
that's
see what
not,
I'm saying?
I do, but that was definitely not the spirit of the
Well,
contract, no.
you know, anyway, I have a request in for town council on that. so.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's, and that's where, now what happened, Mary, in all fairness, is even when the $3,000, so go back to the old contract, when it was 3,000, 3,000, 3,000 for your final 3 years,
Right,
whatever
right,
they were
right.
defined as,
Well, it wasn't though for final 3 years. It was once you achieved a certain number of years. It wasn't a
Right.
retirement, it was a longevity payment.
it was, that's right. So it was
This is-
$3,000, it was one of three $3,000 longevity
This is
payments.
only for this is not for longevity. This is only for retirement.
It is, and
When you take this, you're gone.
you take this, you're gone, correct, it's non-negotiable. The other part of this, which, educators were not so pleased with, is that this is not incorporated into your retirement calculations. So
Right,
this
but that's-
isn't, longevity is,
Yeah.
this isn't, it's a
Right,
cost of
that's
doing
their-
business.
that's
Right,
their,
right.
But,
Um,
so, to, all of this speaks not to the people who get the award. Our concern is the people who don't. In other words, we don't want to budget
Right,
between Pine Hill and the region $50,000 every year, most of which is not going to get used because hardly anyone is going to retire for $5,000.
that's absolutely true. So, I'll also just draw your attention to the fact that any one of our 3 school committees can also incentivize retirement and can offer retirement conditions that this committee may decide to offer to educators of Pine Hill to incentivize retirement. And it happened last year in Dover. The Dover School Committee made that decision, and it enabled a teacher to make life decisions and to retire. And it was.
That's got to be done broadly
Done
across the group, right? It can't be
by
done.
committee. It's the way it's written in the contract. Any individual school committee can do that.
But the offer can be for one individual? It's got to be across the board.
It's got to be made across, right?
That's
So,
fine.
yep. So we have, and I'll give you a case in point, we're losing 2 classroom sections at Chickering next year. It's not a pleasant situation. There aren't 2 impending retirements, to our knowledge at this point. And at the next faculty meeting, the principal of the building has been duly charged with saying, if anyone's contemplating retirement, please make an appointment with Steve Bliss. Simply because it could be in lots of people's interest to have that kind of thing worked out. That is allowable, under the contract.
Well, we don't need to.
It's like the last line in that retirement section.
Okay, I'll look for it. You know I will.
Oh, I know you will, Mary.
But anyway, our major concern is seriously not
Oh, yeah.
with the people who are going to get it. It's that nobody will get it, or one person will get it, and we will have funded, tremendous number, where that money could go.
So what happened in the last contract when these $3,000 longevity payments, you know, when Christine built the budgets, it was that there were supposed to be 5 $3,000 placeholders. So there should have been like a $15,000 placeholder in the budget. As budgets became tighter, et cetera, not all of those five $3,000 placeholders were in the budget. We fully acknowledged that, you know, the committees, when we approved budgets, that, you know, ultimately, if we hit, let's say we budgeted for $3,000 placeholders and then wound up being a fourth, we would, the committee, we would have been on the hook to pay that, by hook or by crook. We would have had to have come up with that. It's a legally binding contract. It's just that ultimately that line became compressed for exactly the reasons you're citing. It was like, not everyone was, we weren't using $15,000 in longevity payments.
So,
We-
the other question I have, well, go ahead.
I think we agree it's a good idea. We
Yeah.
just have to find the right process for the accounting, you know,
Yeah.
the legal purpose.
So we're on it, you're on it apparently.
Great, yeah.
That's good. Connected to that, I did have an actual question. Are you saying that 13 or 18 teachers in your line item description there, in the actual budget, I'm wondering if you're saying that 13 or 18 teachers at Pine Hill qualify for longevity payments. And it's not clear because the early retirement placeholders include the longevity payment for that year. You know what I'm saying?
But the 13 right now
Right.
are people that
Where is she?
get, yeah, she's on page,
Page 1, this blue section here. You'll see the note on longevity.
they,
Provides-
under the contract, they get longevity for hitting certain
Right, I understand
benchmarks.
that.
That's what that represents.
Yeah, no, that's the 13.
Right.
Okay, so the,
You have to fund that, it's in there.
yeah, no. The other, in other words, but the $5,000, according to the contract,
Right.
is minus that year's
Right.
longevity payment.
Correct.
Correct.
So I guess my question is that so are there really 18 people and you're pulling their longevity out, or are there 13 people?
Well, we wouldn't know what.
Yeah, I don't-
I think we're budgeting worst case.
So you're
Yeah.
budgeting for 13, you gotta pay.
13 gotta pay,
Right,
and then
and-
there's this placeholder.
Five
And
new.
this placeholder. Okay,
Yeah.
so we gotta work on that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, between all of us, I think you're right.
Yeah.
No, that's a good question, Mary. Yeah, and those 13 we're on the hook for, yeah.
And just to, throw a little more lighter fluid on the fire, over time, of course, it becomes a case of the only way that could happen over 3 years. If you've got about 30 teachers at Pine Hill, you would be churning 50% of your faculty. I mean, that's
Yeah.
never going to happen. That would be horrible if that happened. For
30,
the
yeah.
education.
Right, right.
34 FTEs in the building.
Huh?
34.
34,
I
so.
was just testing your knowledge.
I'm close.
You are
I'm
close.
So, yeah,
Um,
so that's another reason to doubt that it's going to happen.
Right.
We totally agree.
Yeah.
The other point was, so we mentioned that on the top of the page, and then there was some questions around the utilities. And Chris, do you want to take these points?
Sure.
The utilities, heat, utilities,
For
electricity.
historical information, we remain in a fixed rate contract of .0775 through June of 2015, which is next, as of FY16. The now locked FY16 rate is .071, which is favorable, a little bit favorable. The line item is level funded between 15 and 16. We do agree that that has been an area of cushion, but it's not, right now, we reduce that number to reflect. If you go to the gas on page, utilities on page 3,
Yep,
okay?
right.
That number has already been reduced.
From what?
What's at 58,000?
From,
It wasn't reduced from 50.
oh, I'm in the wrong, you know what, I'm in the wrong pew, okay.
Okay.
Um,
But the right
No.
church, Christine.
Yeah, right, I'm thinking of Chickering, because we have that going. There's an $8,000 difference versus what we actually spent last year. This contract that we entered into for the 12-month period provides what they call a band around. In effect, there's an estimated BTUs of gas that we anticipate using based on last year's utilization. If we exceed that band, then we go to market rate. If you bring it down any further, we're not gonna have any flexibility.
Okay. So,
So that could be affected by the weather in
Yeah,
the wintertime.
right.
Utilization.
so did
Utilization.
that not come down at the region?
Yes, we did, but we have, it didn't come down completely.
No, but as a result of what the regional budget says that because the .77 went to .71 or whatever it is here.
But we brought it down at the
Yeah.
region because it was a lot, the variance was significantly higher.
Had been more.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So I don't think there's any room there. And
Okay.
the other question, what pertained to electricity. And again, our contract expires December, 6 months into next fiscal year, FY16. And at the time the budget was drafted, I was evaluating actual, whether we should lock in or not. We did determine that we would lock in. We locked in at .1154. Currently, we're paying 7.6 cents. We're going to 11 cents, almost 11 and a half cents. That's 51%.
Right,
For
but it's
six-
for half of the year.
Right. So, again, I feel that,
I'm just asking.
Yeah.
Just asking.
Yeah, I mean, I think we, given the volatility, I mean, we acknowledge that there's a little bit of room there, but not probably a lot. And the other is that this is really the only area, I mean, you know how lean, where the budget comes in. I mean, at the end of the year, it's not a lot of play. Mr. Hook?
We've done some energy conservation. Does this account for any of that, or do we see much difference in our energy usage as a result of that? I mean, we did some windows, we did some other things.
Well,
the
certainly lighting.
windows wouldn't really have, I mean, based on the payback periods, we weren't doing windows for that purpose. But the electricity bill has come down to some degree because of all
The fluorescent,
right.
change in lighting.
And actually, if we able to complete the capital project for the soffit installation, that should have an impact.
That should be big. That's where so very good question, Mr. Hook. That's where the building committee said, you know, do we want to put all of our effort in the windows, on which is probably there is a smaller return, or go after the bigger energy loss. The bigger energy losses are insulation, the soffit issue that we're tackling through this capital appropriation, so we're in good shape there. We will share, though, that
So that's not in place yet, that's something that's going to be put into place.
that's what you just voted. It's part of your 200,000.
Right.
Mr. Lesser did let us know, unfortunately, that the region cannot be consumed within the green energy declaration for the town of Sherborne. So, no great surprise there, but we were kind of hoping to be, because there's a huge lighting initiative underway for all of the exterior lights all over the regional campus. But the Sherborne's declaration does not extend to the regional campus, so that was a disappointment. Yeah. So, just wanted to. And the other point, when we handed out the staffing enrollment report, there were just a couple things on here that we were anxious to highlight with you. One is that, so anything appearing in red, we come back to for conversation. One, we highlighted the kindergarten enrollment for next year because we have pretty solid indication that we'll actually be probably at more like 51 even at this point for next year. So the kindergarten at this point expected for Pine Hill in the fall is literally level with what's expected in Dover for the kindergarten class. I mean, student for student.
Level.
So, yeah, same size kindergarten class.
See that coming?
Yep. So that's,
Get ready.
yeah. Well, these 100 and...
In 5 years, get ready, children.
On your enrollment
Yes.
report, do you assume, it looks like you're taking just the number from the previous year, like the kindergarten goes first. Do you not assume move-ins for other grades?
So-
Because you can see last year, I mean, you had 49 in the kindergarten, this year you have 60 in the first grade.
Sure. So if you go, that's a great question. If you go to the last page, on page 4, it walks you, go to the first asterisk, the first note. It walks you through that the variable you're pondering is the plus net migration of 11 students. So we're assuming, based on historical information, that ultimately all the ins and outs that happen
Right.
intertextually, sort of within the grades, that ultimately will land about 11 students stronger. We were above that this year. We had very strong, our enrollment's very strong, relatively speaking. You know, Chickering for next year's opening, like 42 students less than what they have today in the building. So this, we could have stabilized, and hopefully we'll be rebounding and growing Pine Hill. And we hope that after next year, Chickering has sort of landed at, maybe it's a new normal, maybe not, but that fair?
Absolutely. Our net migration this year was 21 students, so it was a robust acquisition.
Yeah. Bob will put a billboard off the Mass Pike.
It
Homes for
comes
sale, I'm
from,
sure.
actually, I saw today that the town of Sherburne's property sales were up 16%, like the number of property sales were up 16% this year, so I think that's a direct correlation to how many new students come into the school.
Yeah. Conversely, so I work pretty closely with Bob Cox, who's a realtor in Dover, and we track some of the information. And, you know, the typical family moving into Dover right now is a family of 2, 34 to 35 years old, with 1 child. And that's just sort of the demographic profile moving into Dover at the moment. And lots of new construction, but we saw a lot of real estate activity in Sherborne. And we're hoping that the new construction in Dover will realize 1 to 2 children. But we just haven't, a lot of those homes are, you drive, what's that, Mayor?
I hope they all move. If they don't, no, in 5 years, seriously.
Yeah. It's a
and
big
has
shift.
huge implications for the regional budget.
Right, the percentage shift,
Does.
right.
Huge,
Huge.
huge,
Huge?
Huge?
I've
So,
I've got a question about the enrollment report, if that's, Frank, if I can.
Sure, go ahead.
For 15-16, the special ed enrollment is 41. And the note on the back says, does not include out-of-district placed students. It does include pre-K Sherburne students. Then there's another note, I guess, as to how it's calculated. Is that the same for all the other years? It does not include, so the 61 for 2014-15 is in district. It does not include out-of-district. Is that right? So my question is, that's a lot. That's a huge drop, but yet the in-district budget is still going up. You know, it's going from $1,131,000 to $1,151,000 with 20 less kids, and that's just in district. If we're voting this tonight, I'd like to get some detail. If we're not voting it, then we can do it later. But I mean, that's a per student cost that goes up 50% from 18.5 to 28. So it just seems like a.
So each year we subtract out the number of 5th grade students that are migrating up to the middle school.
Right.
So we subtract that cost, but it doesn't take into consideration new students coming into preschool for next year, students being identified during the year. I could probably say that the number of 41, if I were to get a complete count today, would be different from December 8th when this was revised. I was talking to Mr. Bliss the other day as we were doing enrollment reports and things, and I was talking to the assistant in the special ed office, the administrative assistant, and she said, well, it's interesting you asked, because I was asking about number of enrollments for same kind of report. She said, had you called me at 9 o'clock this morning, this would have been the number. But we just had another IEP signed that was out for signature, and now that student is officially a special education student. So these numbers are so very fluid all the time. I give you a number of 41 because I take on that date the number of special education students and subtract out the fifth graders. In the meantime, that does not account for the number of IEPs out there waiting for parent signature. And once they're signed, those students are officially on our enrollment for special education. It doesn't take into account, students that are currently being evaluated right now at this time, who will be added to the number if they end up eligible for special education services. We don't end up at the end of the year with that same number.
Well,
Does that make sense?
what would, yeah, all of it makes sense, but, a lot of time we talk or we have to talk in generalities about special ed. But that's just a huge, huge gap to be down 30% with a flat or slightly increasing budget. So to me, that if it were the same cost, and the cost for the last 3 years per child was 20.2, 20.8, 18.5, so it dropped a little bit last year. And if you were to take 41, and granted there's others maybe coming in, at last year's rate of 18.5, you get a difference of $373,000. And it's a huge difference in dollars. So it would be interesting to know how those numbers worked out last year. So if you were predicting if it was 55 and it turned out to be 61, and I understand it's fluid, I understand it happens, especially with in-district and the range of services is broad. But at some point, we've seen the school population drop by 21%, and, the budget keeps going up, and we ask questions about shouldn't it be going down or what can go down. I understand some of those are fixed, but some are variable. The teachers are sort of fixed at levels, in terms of number of kids to some degree, but then you have contract and specialists. I would, with such a huge difference from last year to this year, I would like to see some detail on how that's played out in the past. It's just a huge amount of money to be sort of generalized.
And you bring up the point, and it's something to keep in mind that, I always use the phrase with special education, it's not a one-to-one correspondence. So 41 students, it's not the same as dividing out class sizes in general education.
Well,
it depends on the student.
I
The other
understand.
thing to keep in mind is at this time last year, we did reduce the special education staff at Pine Hill by 1 teacher and 1 teaching assistant. We had 2 retirements and only replaced 1 of those, and we also reduced.
And I understand that, and I appreciate that, but still the number's huge.
If I may point out, again, I don't know all the nuances that go into the number. If we currently have 61 children that are identified as educationally disabled, 9 are matriculating at the end of this year to middle school.
Say that again?
Only, of our 61 children that we currently have on education plans, 9 are matriculating at the end of this year to middle school. So again, I don't know what else is factored in that number. The footnote is on the last page.
Yeah, I got that.
So I don't know if there's something else or if perhaps that's a typo. But I also will point out that children that move in are not in statistical ratio with the number of children we have on ed plans, meaning of the 21 children that moved in this summer, far more than 20%, if that's our average of children, that might have educational disabilities, far more than 20% of our new students statistically came with education plans.
But they're in the number. I mean, if it's 41, it's 41,
Yeah.
it's a third less. So I understand how it fluctuates and how one child could cost way more than another child. If it was a difference of 50 grand, that'd be one thing, but it's a difference of, $350,000. I just think we should be able to understand where those differences lie. Now, you said last year there was 1 less aide?
Yes.
So the special education assistants, it shows you know, going from 7 when we had a population of 57 and 465 total, going up to 11 and then coming back down to 10. It shows 10, 10, 10. Is that different than what you're talking about? One less aide?
Right.
And the teachers are the same, the aides are the same, the guidance is the same, the occupational therapist is the same. I'm just saying it's on a scale that's hard to understand.
So we reduced last year our occupational therapist by 0.2. It was 1.4, we reduced to 1.2. And you are correct, the number stayed 10 because although we did cut an educational assistant, we did end up with another student that needed
Right.
one-to-one.
One-to-one.
So, are we voting the budget tonight?
We're just supposed to have it by
The high water mark.
December 31st.
Okay. Well,
Now, the budget, when it's voted, usually the way it goes, it can be cut, but it can't be
Right.
increased.
Right.
And so, this
Well,
budget could be,
And we can put some stuff together for you, for sure.
let me ask, does anybody else have kind of a problem with that, understanding why it would be flat with a third, with the numbers dropping by a third?
well, are you projecting? She's in a huddle there.
I'm sorry.
Terry,
Yes.
are you have the 41, but are you projecting that some of the people that are in the stream are going to be requiring services?
Absolutely. The other thing I can tell you without a doubt, in looking at the teachers at Pine Hill, we are currently working with 4 teachers that are covering services, reading services, written language services, in-class support, pull-out support for kindergarten through grade 5.
Explain that, for regular ed teachers?
Special educators.
Special ed. So how is that different? I mean, how does that?
Sorry, I'm trying to make sure I'm counting right. I'm not in the building.
4 is
but
correct.
We have 4 special educators that are spread and need to provide services in classrooms from kindergarten through 5th grade. So they are providing pull-out services for students, reading, written language, things like that, and in-class support for students that have those services on their IEPs as well. So they are 4 teachers spread across 5 grade levels and whatever number of sections. We may have students in all 3 sections in a grade level. So it's a piece of what happens in the buildings for scheduling, and to provide all of the services on
I understand
IEPs.
if you run a really lean shop, and then you get some breathing room, you know, maybe that's sort of breathing room, right? But I look at regular education aides. There's been 8 for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, with enrollment going from 465 to 365. So when we talk about level service, that's not level service. Now, so maybe 8 was incredibly light and 8's just right now. But I don't know that. There's no way to know that. So I understand people are spread thin. I understand the budget's tight. This is a huge dollar difference for the number of kids. So if it's
I
not,
think we can show you.
if it's not
Yeah,
40,
we'll take it- yeah, we'll,
it's 41, and it's 41 on this one, 41 on the previous one, I'm assuming 41 is a good number. But I would like to see how that number changed. So we talk about things in the system, things coming up. I'm assuming you're accounting for that, right? Because if you weren't, it could be a big shock.
we'll come up with something.
We can't, the numbers you see are only current. We're not accounting for anything coming up in the system. Unless a student has a current signed IEP, their number is not on this page for you.
So there is a possibility that if we're tight now, we have.
Well,
I think we can show you.
huge number.
I think we can show you.
It's just a huge number.
Yes.
Is the in-class model, where they go into the class to help the students in the model, is it possible that, as we're looking forward, because some are going out and some are coming in, is that they might have been going in the past to help 3 students in a certain time period, now there might only be 1 person in that classroom, but because they're in that classroom, you have to go in there anyway if there is only 1, or?
We try to be very careful when we are doing scheduling and make a point to sit with the special education teachers to group students, and we make an effort to do 2 things. Not to overload a teacher with a lot of special education students because it makes the scheduling more convenient, but we also try not to spread them if we don't have to across each of the class sections. We try to do a good job of not putting a singleton student into a classroom that causes our special educators to have to schedule 1 more piece to see a single student.
And this year, I want to be very careful and very diplomatic how I say this, but this year we erred on over-clustering students in some cases where competing needs are beyond what our classroom teachers can reasonably reconcile with. I look forward to
Spreading them
being
out.
as creative as possible moving forward. But this year, I can unempirically tell you, in at least 3 classrooms, we over-clustered students in an effort to be efficient.
All right.
So we'll put together something will be included in the January report.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, yes, Mary?
Just, this is purely informational. No, I'm confident. What is the difference between a tier 1 and a tier 3 aid? And is there a tier 2? I'm just curious.
Sure. Terry, do you want to deal with that?
So the difference in the tiers is based on several factors. The level of education and degree that the educational assistant holds, as well as for educational assistants at Tier 3, specific training they've had and background they have in certain things such as applied behavior analysis,
So,
working.
like a tier, which is the more?
Tier 3 is the highest
3 is the
rate.
highest. Okay, so like 1, you wouldn't necessarily even need a bachelor's, is that correct?
No.
Yes. They all require
They all require
an associate's degree. is that correct?
Associate's degree for
Associate's
tier
degree
1.
for Tier 1.
One.
Tier 2 is the minimum of a bachelor's degree. Tier 3 is that bachelor's degree, but also a background and some training in a specific area.
And we don't have any tier 2s, is that correct?
I don't think at Pine Hill
I mean,
we do at the
it
moment.
doesn't-
We don't
I mean,
have
it
tier 2.
doesn't show it.
Right.
I mean, you know.
Tier 3 typically, we often pride ourselves on, we'll have tier 3 folks who maybe not only bachelor's degree, maybe master's degree holding people who are certified teachers who are, they're actively looking for a teaching position, but really bring a skill set that, and very often, those individuals are called upon to modify curriculum, so they're in a much more heightened instructional role than an educational assistant 1 who's doing general classroom support. It's very, the rationale to go from 1 to 2, 2 to 3 is significant, and the pay is significantly different. So anyone placed at Ed 3, it's a highly scrutinized situation.
So are these then all associated with SPED or?
No,
No, I didn't
no,
think so.
no,
I didn't think so.
No, absolutely.
So,
Barb, you-
did we used to have 4 aides and now we have 5?
in which category?
And, oh boy, wherever it says, includes page 1 of section 2. It says includes 1 full-time aide at tier 3 and 4 full-time at tier 1.
Here-
And then it says in the kindergarten includes 3 aides at tier 1 and longevity, and I get the longevity thing.
So those are our 8 general education ed assistants.
Right.
And because kindergarten is broken out, so it's the 5 plus 3, we're,
Used to just have 4?
no.
Up from 1 to 5? Oh, we didn't.
The ratio is 1 per kindergarten classroom,
Yeah.
and then 1 per grade level every grade thereafter.
Okay. Oh, so when we went up a section in kindergarten, maybe that's where it went up to 3?
Back when you rolled out full-day kindergarten,
Yeah.
those positions were only funded at .8, so maybe when they were averaged together, it looked less, but it was, the bodies were still the same.
Just curious.
Okay, so actually, if you have the sheet that says the fiscal year 2016 budget revisions,
That's a separate vision.
a single page,
The packet.
has some nice red with a blue stripe on it.
Is that in the front?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
Found it.
You find it?
You betcha.
So this is what we hand out every time we revise the budget. This is the change sheet here. And so the change that was made from last month was with respect to the guidance counselor position. So you'll notice below the blue line is the adjustment of that position to put that at 1.0. So our budget, our overall budget was negative 0.75% last month, and it's at negative 0.47% once that adjustment is made, as it stands today. Nothing else being adjusted in the budget.
And as I said, this budget can be adjusted downward. Okay,
Not go
but
up.
typically it does not go up once it's submitted the
Right.
31st. So the number right now suggested here is $6,714,806. So we have to put a number forward to give to the town accountant
Correct.
to put things together.
Correct.
Could I just ask one more point?
Sure.
I'm sorry. In the special ed accountant in here, okay, there are 2 numbers that don't match. I'm not questioning them necessarily. I'm just looking for the explanation of why they don't match, because I can't make them match, no matter what mathematical things I try to do. And that is the 2 numbers on, okay, so the last sheet of section 2.
So that'd be page 4 of the expanded sheets?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so tuition to non-publics is listed there at 63,182 for Pine Hill OOD. You see that?
Where's the number?
60, the change, 63,182 down. Tuition to non-publics,
Oh,
okay? And for the region, that same line is down 83,284. You see that?
Yes.
Everywhere,
Yes.
yeah?
Yep.
Okay, so, but then, when you go to section 4, this sheet here, okay, those numbers are different. They are 25,714 and 159,373. I can't make them come out.
And I can explain why.
That's all I want.
I ran that report for that section 4, and I made another adjustment and never reran that report.
Okay, so which
Your detail,
This is,
section 2 is correct.
that's correct, and this is wrong.
So
Okay.
I will run
Okay,
another.
I just couldn't,
So that it ties out.
Christine, I spent a lot of time doing math, trying to make
what's my
those
question?
add up.
we're just trying to keep you busy now.
Yeah. So like, nothing to do. Okay,
So we'll do that, and then if there are any other changes also, we don't typically hand out these reprinted until the deal is done. So you'll also ultimately receive a final set if anything need to be changed in the detail.
Can I make one more comment?
Sure.
In the staffing enrollment on page 4, and this goes back to the music or the arts that we were talking about earlier, this sort of brings it to light for me where you say kindergarten students and students in grades 3 through 5 have PE once per week. Grades 1 and 2 have PE twice per week for half the year, and have PE and health for the second half of the year. Students in grade 3 and 4 have health when scheduling permits.
Right.
All students in grades K through 5 receive art instruction once weekly. That's what makes me think things are parsed pretty finely in terms of time during the day. When Mr. Banyos was here, there were issues with the math curriculum, and he said, we're going to put more time in math. And as time goes on, kids will be spending more time with foreign language, right? So the fifth graders aren't doing that now, but they will be, in a couple years. So I am all for the arts, but I just wonder where the time's going to come from. That's my main concern, and if thought is given to the balance. You could say, which is more important, chorus or math? Well, they're both important, right? But I just wonder where the time's going to come from. So that's part of the discussion I would like to hear.
So we need to put a number forward. Does anyone want to make a motion for a number?
Before we put, may I just ask one last question?
Sure.
Should the appetite go forward, and we have the numbers for said
Say that again, please.
fine arts, for the fine arts
Okay.
position,
Yeah.
that would make this number be somewhat larger.
No, because the fine arts position is in the budget as
It's already embedded in here, at a point that's acceptable, so that it could come down.
It's at the high water mark. Right.
So
the only thing
basically,
that
if it were to
Right.
change, it would become less.
Correct. Yep.
We've had a lot of high water marks.
Ultimately, it flows.
And that's great. I do appreciate that.
It ties in with our drainage problem.
Yes, which we won't talk about tonight.
So,
So which is the number again? So it's a
67,
okay, 6714,806.
right.
So, wanted to make a motion to
If you like.
accept, okay. So I'll make a motion to put forward a total budget for 2016 fiscal year of $6,714,806.
Okay.
Second.
Any other discussion about it?
I'd like to make a note that the FY15 budget number was $6,746 million, and we're proposing this year $6,714,000, which is down. It looks like is that 0.47%?
Right. Yeah, $31,664 less than last year, not just less of an increase, it's an actual cut. In fact, this is the second year in a row that our budget has actually gone down at this point in time. Yes?
The regular ed budget has gone up, the special ed budget has gone down. I think it's important to point out that the regular ed budget continues to climb with fewer kids.
Yep.
Providing more service.
And actually, the way this one shows, it's up 1.42%, so it is up, but it's up within the guidelines.
Correct.
Right. Any other discussion or comments?
Just a couple accounts that are quote regular ed that we've gone up in, impact, like technology,
Salary.
furniture,
Right.
yeah.
You got 20% less kids, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, but those should have been funded to begin with.
Years
I
ago.
get that too.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay, so 3 favor, 1 abstention.
Actually, isn't it two? There's one on here.
No, can't really abstain unless you're here. Okay, so next we have the consent agenda. We have the school committee minutes for November 18th.
Well, I was going to ask the question, what happened to that straw poll, but now that I know it was for something else, I'm all set.
I'll take that vote, though.
Any motion?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, acceptance? Okay, so next for review, we have the regional school committee minutes, what you have, the Dover school committee minutes. A little note that we have some homework to do for our town report and items for the January meeting. So Mr. Bliss, then you will have some more special.
Sure, we'll have the revised one-pager from tab 4 of your book that Mrs. Wolf referenced. We will probably convene by then, we'll have to convene the Pine Hill Building Committee, Mr. Hess, I believe, because we want to have further discussion with that committee around the drainage issues.
Right.
We'll also have some extrapolation on the curricular components and the time behind the fine arts position as well as an update. And then we'll have greater explanation on in-district special education cost increases related to FY16.
Okay. And then I see we have, do we still need this executive session?
We do.
Mr. Bliss?
Thank you.
Okay, so that this has to be by roll call to go into executive session. So Susan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yep.
Yes, yes.
And Frank, yes. Okay, so move to, we move to go into executive session, so we were,
Not to return to open session.
not to return to open session, correct, thank you. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Quite an audience today.
Happy holidays.